there was some, questioning of the Miami offensive coordinator, maybe with some, not the most, appropriate comments for, a young, freshman coming in, getting fed to the wolves. I guess he says he wasn't happy with his performance, and but from what I've heard, Dan Enos is somewhat of a perfectionist, and I don't know what he expected. I don't know if there was something internally, exchange of, I don't know what he said then before. I don't know.
I personally thought the Miami quarterback did pretty well for considering that he was basically on the ground for half the game.
I would have agreed with you. So I don't know what Enos, I don't know what he expected of him, to accomplish, with that offense. I don't know. So that's between them internally. I think the Hurricanes could have won that game if they would have chose, to go for and hope, make field goals, but they chose otherwise. In regards to the Gator quarterback from Crawfordville, Wakulla, what's his name again?
Felipe Franks.
Felipe Franks. He looked a little bit shaky. He didn't look like he picked up from where he left off last season, that's for sure. But maybe credit, Miami, coming up with some, decent plays in the secondary as well. A few fumbles there. I think they all went Miami's way. It was a sloppy game overall. I was happy to see those two teams meet, but I had hoped for it was a competitive game, just not in the form, regular season form that I had hoped for.
Yeah, it was a competitive game, but it was also a very sloppy game, and it almost looked like what you would see in a high school preseason game. That's
fair. Yeah.
In terms of the conferences, do you see either of these teams being a potential threat to Alabama or Clemson, or those two just above, or I guess anyone in those conferences for that matter being a threat to Clemson or Alabama?
I don't see these. I don't see these two teams being a threat to those teams you said, Clemson. No.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't either.
LSU, possibly. To me, LSU's defense is right up there with anyone in the country, defensively speaking. Other than that, in the ACC, what are you looking at? Maybe who's the second best team? Arguably Miami, arguably Syracuse.
If anything's like last year, I would say Syracuse.
Sure, yeah, but they're so far, behind. They're probably, right now, 21-point underdogs. Clemson on a neutral field.
They were probably 2,100-point underdogs last year too.
Right. So, they're opening with Georgia Tech, Clemson. I think they're 37-point favorites. 37-point favorites, to a team that runs triple option.
Yeah, that's
try to control the clock. That's pretty nuts.
That's something I may have to check that game out, just because Georgia Tech is that type of team that they can be huge underdogs and they'll find a way to make it close because of that offense. If they control the tempo, then you never know how close they can make it. They pull upsets, and they've pulled major upsets before. Not saying that I think that Georgia Tech wins that game, but you just never know. It is first week of the season.
Right. The only other team I would mention, I don't think there's anyone really in the ACC that's going to, do anything to Clemson. But the only other The only other team I did mention LSU. Georgia. Georgia. I don't know what A&M has got this year. They should be, but I think Georgia's. Georgia should be mentioned.
Speaking of like top teams, I'm guessing we're both probably would agree that at least the half of the field would probably be set for the playoffs with Clemson and Alabama. The question is, who fills out those last two spots?
You're probably going to see Oklahoma in there, maybe. Is that fair?
Yeah, I can see Oklahoma definitely. I will say last year I was impressed with Texas. The question is, they probably would have. The only thing is they probably would have to sweep Oklahoma to get that spot, and I don't know if they're able to do that, to be honest. So I do think Oklahoma, at least of the Big 12 teams, would probably be the most likely one to get in to the playoffs, followed by Texas.
Sure. Yep. So yeah, you have Texas, Oklahoma there, but other than that, I would have to go to the Big Ten, where you'd be looking at probably Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. There's a lot of hype with Michigan, which I don't really understand because they had a few players transfer out. They had some upper level defensive players go to the NFL. I mean,
Devin
first
Bush.
rounders. Yeah, Devin Bush, Chase Winovich, Rashawn Gary. Those are I believe they had one or two more in the draft overall, but they were that's somewhat you lose those players. Those are guys that are going to make it in the NFL. You're filling shoes, but you're not going to replace those players like you're just not going to this quick.
Oh, definitely. That's why actually I spoke beforehand. Like I saw Penn State being a dark horse. I can honestly see Penn State winning the Big Ten because I still have question marks with Ohio State and Michigan. I'm not really sold on either of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's up for grabs, and Penn State might be that team just kind of like waiting on the side, to strike. They are kind of they have had a pretty Penn State is when I was growing up, they were usually right in the mix of the national championship. So maybe this is their year to get back.
It would definitely be interesting. So what would be your top four at this point? Like we can always come back to it later in the year, but at this early stage, what would probably be your top four?
I'm gonna go Clemson, and then I'm gonna go Alabama, and then I'm gonna go. I'll go Georgia, and you're going to hate me when I say this, but I'm going to go LSU.
You seriously think 3 SEC teams are going to make it into the four spots?
I'm not saying they're going to. You asked me who the top four.
Okay, my bad. I think I should have specified. I met the 4 playoff teams.
Okay. Okay, so I thought we had just discussed. I would. I guess I'll say Clemson, Alabama. I'll say Oklahoma and Ohio State.
Okay. I guess I can't really argue with that picks, and I think I've seen a lot of people picking that exact one. I definitely Clemson, Alabama, those two. It's pretty easy to pick. As I said before the show, those are the two I see going undefeated in the regular season. So that's going to lock them both in with ease. For a third team, I guess I'll go with Oklahoma being the third team. And we didn't really talk about the Pac-12. I think that would be a toss-up between Washington and USC. But I'm just not sure if the Pac-12 gets the team in. At this point, I think if Washington somehow went undefeated, they might get in. But I'm going to go with the same dark horse I talked about earlier. I'm going to go with Penn State being the fourth team to get in.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Penn State to me is probably around 15 to 20. But as far as the Pac-10 goes, I think USC is way down. If I'm not mistaken, I think USC is down. Just so you know.
Okay. So I guess Washington probably the clear favorite in that conference.
I would say keep an eye on Washington State and Stanford also as well.
And Utah. I've been hearing good things about them as well.
That's fair. But yeah, USC is pretty down. But yeah, I would say Washington. Oh, and Oregon as well.
And thank goodness you brought up Oregon, because that's probably going to be the biggest matchup this week. Oregon facing Auburn. I don't know where this game's at, to be honest, but regardless, I think it'll be a good game wherever they're playing.
Right. So, yeah. Interestingly, we hear, but forums, social media, we talk about, Florida college football statewide. Why is it just not as good as what it used to be? What's wrong with us? And it looks like California has the same problem right now.
Honestly,
you look at California, the only team like that worth mentioning would be like maybe Stanford. Like, California's down. I mean, they were horrible a year or two ago. UCLA is way down. USC is way down. So they might have the similar problem as us.
Honestly, I think what's causing it is, at least I will say with Florida, I can't exactly speak to California since I don't really follow the individual players as much for that state like I do for Florida.
Yeah.
It's so many colleges. They come in and they poach the best players. You got Alabama, you got Clemson, you got LSU, you get Auburn, you get Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. All these schools, Notre Dame, Texas even, Oklahoma, all these schools, they will come and pluck some of the best players right out of Florida, so they're not going to the main colleges.
Right.
One of the biggest things that's hurting is the fact the Big Three seemingly has struggled as of late to nail the top Florida players onto their roster because the best players have been going out of state.
Yeah, and then the other question these days is who is the Big Three now?
Yeah, that's a question that I wondered myself. I will say this: I know there's a lot of people Florida fans that probably won't like to hear this. The 2017 team where UCF was voted by that one computer poll to be national champs. I will say with conviction that UCF team was the best team in all of Florida that year. They would have beaten UF. They would have beaten Florida State. They would have beaten Miami. I do not. None of those teams that year would have beaten them.
I definitely wouldn't question that year. I mean, as far as I'm, if Mackenzie Milton doesn't go down last year, what happens? I don't know.
I think that if he doesn't go down, they probably beat LSU.
I think that's I think that's probably fair. Yeah, and so